Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Temeyer. We're here to kick off, I believe, the 15th module of the USACE Sustainable Project Delivery Series. Today, we intend to talk about tools and resources related to sustainability, and I think we also intend to maybe have a little bit of discussion about what some additional desires and needs might be on that front as well. Before I introduce our presenter, just a couple of simple ground rules. If you can keep your microphones on mute through the duration of the presentation, that would be helpful. We may have some opportunity at the end for some open dialogue. But if you do have questions, please put those questions in the chat box, and I'll try to moderate that a little bit and insert those questions and discuss those things through the duration of the webinar. So. With that address, I guess ultimately, Kelli Polzin is our presenter for today. Kelli is a registered architect and lead AP in engineering construction manager for the Army Corps of Engineers Northwestern Division on the Department of Veteran Affairs PMO. She started her USACE career at Seattle District, where she had extensive experience in sustainable design and development during all phases of project delivery, through leading projects through LEED Silver and Gold certification. She went on to headquarters, where she served as a sustainability program manager for engineering and construction, and transitioned to the VA PMO engineering and construction manager position to focus on healthcare construction. Her current position is supporting VA program manager construction projects in design and construction in Portland, American Lake, Washington, Fort Harrison, Montana, and St. Louis, Missouri. Kelli?
All right, thanks, Andy. So we're hoping this will be a quick run through so that there is time to get feedback from you all. As Andy mentioned, we are interested in finding out more about guidance, training, other resources you all could use to support your project delivery and making sure we're achieving high-performance sustainable buildings. So please do use the chat to provide any resource tools you find useful in the work that you do, and please let us know if there's areas that you think additional training or guidance could be provided on. And we'll pause for some of that discussion at the end. With that, today we're going to go through some online as well as other human resources available to teams with implementing sustainability. So we're going to run through some of the documents, websites that are maintained, and folks that you can reach out to around the Corps, and kind of where those resources are kept up to date. If you've participated in these other sessions that we've had, you know that the Unified Facility Criteria 12002 is where we have our high performance and sustainable buildings requirements. The links provided here, the last update was December 2020. We do want you to be aware that this document does change pretty frequently, and I understand there is another change scheduled in the near future. Updates are kind of a holistic update, whereas changes are typically involve like more minor items to address from criteria change requests or new things that have come out, but may not be like a majority of the document changing. So it should be, I'm thinking on the order of something more minor that's coming to address some of the new executive orders. I'm not sure if we have Eric up workflow. I know we didn't have Jansen today to add anything on that, but just so you're aware, make sure that you're checking back in on whole building design guide to see if the latest PDF you have is the current document that's out there. So just be aware of that. Also, we wanted to highlight some of the active engineering and construction bulletins worth checking out if you haven't had a chance to look at them. The first one, the 2021-12, Achieving Certification under LEED version 4, has a lot of great crosswalk tools with LEED and our federal requirements in the UFC, as well as the Army Sustainable Design and Development Policy, and just really supports providing information to teams on optimizing your approach to achieving LEED certification, as well as the high performance sustainable building requirements. ECB 2020-8, execution and documentation requirements for life cycle cost analyses. That one came out in response to Seminote 22 and provides updated information on the documentation for your LCCAs, and it kind of builds on and updates things that were in ECB 2015-7 on life cycle cost analysis, as well as engineering regulation for energy modeling and life cycle cost analysis. So that's a good one to check out to help you on the path to doing that documentation. For ECB 2020-6, the implementation of resilience principles. This one's introduction to USACE principles of resilience: prepare, absorb, recover, and adapt, so that we can better address that in our engineering and construction efforts. So that's a good intro document there, and I expect there will be more meaty criteria information and guidance in the future on that subject. ECB 2019-7, high performance sustainable design application renovation projects, lessons learned. This came out of lessons learned from sustainable design and development validation visits, and also provides a link to the deep energy retrofit guide that's hosted on Whole Building Design Guide. Likewise, the 2018-13 ECB captures lessons learned from other previous sustainable design and development policy validation visits to Fort Leonard Wood and Fort Belvoir. So those two ECBs would be great to look at to see, what's been working and maybe where there's areas for improvement, see if your project may need to have a little focus on some of those. And then ECB 2017-23, I believe we covered some of this information in the materials focus session we had a few weeks back, but this is a good comprehensive guide on all of the FAR clauses, and it includes a table of those FAR clauses with the requirements, as well as some guidance on applicability and exceptions. It covers things like sustainable materials, energy efficient products, printing, waste reduction, ozone depleting substances. So definitely check that out. Something we should be going through with our contracting partners and making sure that we're getting all of the required FAR clauses into our contracts. Also, we wanted to highlight some of the engineering regulations to know and consult for the ER on energy modeling and life cycle cost analysis. There were 2 ECBs that preceded that got rolled up into the CR. Recommend checking that out as you're going through, early design and locking in your scope and budget, making sure that you're getting all of the, energy requirements in there and doing the life cycle cost analysis documentation early on in the project life cycle. And then the total building commissioning procedures, this was updated following an ECB we had a while back to make sure we were covering the full life cycle of total building commissioning through all the way through design, construction, and post-occupancy. So this is a good resource for that full process and roles and responsibilities guideline to use to help talking through that scope with your internal teams, as well as your commissioning authorities that you may be hiring for the projects. And then commissioning systems manual goes hand in hand with the commissioning process as far as providing that documentation at the end of the project for facility management. We also wanted to highlight, some links for you all as far as where to find USCs and the ECBs, also the engineering regulations. Used to be hosted on Whole Building Design Guide, but those are actually at the publications.usace.army.mil link. Good location to find engineering regs, manuals, pamphlets, etc. So check that out for sure. And then also wanted to highlight the Tri-Service sustainability site that's hosted on Whole Building Design Guide. We might have touched on this before in an earlier session, but I wanted to highlight for you all required tracking and reporting link when you go there. That's where you're going to be able to look up your checklists and record cards, depending on who you're executing a project for. If it's Army, Navy, or Air Force, we have the associated links on here, and there should be instructions for when those need to be reported and set upward, and how that's supposed to be done. So check those out. That should be the guide for how we're walking through documenting our compliance and verifying that as a team, so that we're getting credit for the designs meeting USC 12002. And then also there are some additional links provided if you go to the training area. Recommend checking that out. And then I believe the Deep Energy Retrofit Guide is under the additional resources. So check that out. If you haven't been there before, recommend that in support of your project execution. And then we also wanted to cover the IHS Standards. We have this on Whole Buildings Design Guide. If you go to the non-government standards link, you need to register, I believe. So you'll select the Army radio button and you'll log in. It'll ask you for registering if you haven't before, and I believe that there's a password to log in at this point. But you just go to the engineering workbench and then search for, if you're looking for ASHRAE standards, IBC, NFPA, any of those codes, ASMs. This is a resource that headquarters centrally funds for our offices to be able to access. So if you're not familiar with, you don't necessarily need to have hard copies locally at your office. You can get those documents virtually through the IHS Standards portal on Whole Building Design Guide. All right, and then we wanted, I see there may be comments. Should we pause?
Yeah, and that was just saying that there's some login issues potentially with the different VPN portals with people teleworking. I don't know that I've seen that, but I'm not sure that I would have seen it. So good input. And but ultimately, I think that IHS toolbox is extremely useful for industry type standards that are often referenced by our UFCs and our policies and things like that.
Definitely, yeah, because you'll see tons of references in our specs, and that's going to be the go-to spot to get access to look into those further, for sure. And then we've got Lead Online. We wanted to highlight this as far as logging in to being able to look at specific credits that you're pursuing. If you're doing an Army project, everything is hosted on the USGBC site now, so there's not really a need to buy a book like they had in the past. So these screenshots, let's see. First, you'll want to sign in to make sure that no information is really screened out for you, and then selecting your, what version of lead you're pursuing, if it's new construction, et cetera, and then what version. This one's showing version 4. And then, as you're selecting a credit or prerequisite, when you click on there, there's, information about what's the intent of the credit. There's additional explanation. There's tips on how to achieve it, and there's step-by-step guidance. So definitely check out this resource and use that as you're pursuing a lead certification for Army projects. All right. And then I wanted to highlight also that there's education and training through the Army membership that's maintained at headquarters, but you need to have a login, and linked up with the account to get access to this. I think we provided some of that information in an earlier session. But basically, once you're signed in, then you'll be able to access these courses. I think you can look at them without being logged in to see what's out there. But as far as being able to access it, you need to be logged in to the Army membership account to get there. So as long as you're all linked up and connected, you'll be able to get to those. But essentially, going to the education link or being logged in and go to the education tab and courses, you'll see a screen like this where they'll have all of their courses outlined here. You can filter it if you're trying to get your credential maintenance done for Lead AP, or if you're looking for AIA units or specific lead version training. They've got different filtering to help sort and find what you're looking for. I wanted to put that out there. Did I see any more comments that we should pause for, Andy?
So Nicole was saying that some districts choose to purchase a digital book. If you add a bit installation or a base and have difficulty getting internet, there still are opportunities to purchase digital content that you can save and open, separately. I know we push our people to use the online tool as much as possible because there's just an abundance of information that's kept more current there, but it doesn't mean that the the electronic resources don't serve their purpose for certain things. I would also reinforce that the education and training resources on USGBC are really helpful. I'm an architect, and I was able to knock out all my training for both my licensure and my AP this last go around on that website.
Yeah, it's definitely a quick way to access those learning units that you need to get for both your professional licenses as well as Lead AP. So definitely recommend checking that out as a free resource we've got. All right, and then since we were giving you a bunch of lead resources, we also wanted to put these links out there. I think we shared this during the third-party certification presentation, but basically if you're pursuing guiding principles assessment or guiding principles compliance with GBCI or GBI, these are the links for them, and you can get their associated guides for pursuing that certification path, like if you're doing an Air Force project. So that's also another resource. And then my understanding, I think this is where I was going to plug in that headquarters does have vouchers for, I think it's GBI's Guiding Principles Compliance certificate training. And so if you are interested in that, I know Eric Mucklow is leaving after this week. So I'm going to say reach out to Scott Wick if you're looking for doing that certification and you want to get more information on that. I think it sounds like it could be pretty helpful if you're working on Air Force projects. Andy, I don't know if there's anything you'd add there.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think many of us are in a reality where, you know, the maybe not all of our workload is Army centric, and therefore we're using different third-party certification tools. And so I know that there seems to be a lot of interest both within our district and with our AEs in using GBI as a compliance methodology. And so yeah, some additional training. It's become, I think it's become a little bit more difficult for a lot of people to try to track all these different compliance tools, but access to training always helps that stuff.
Did I see another chat question or comment?
The question was, which of these two are more preferred for Air Force projects? I would, you know, I don't know that it's that there's a clear winner, for lack of a better term, but I have heard some feedback that the GBI tool is a little bit more favored by our AEs. It also, if you're dealing with secure projects, what I can say is, you know, if you have concerns about document control and stuff like that on your projects, it seems like the GBI path is a little bit easier on that front. But I think we've used both tools on a variety of projects successfully.
Yeah, yeah, and the Tri-Service Sustainable Functional Working Group that's got AFCAC, NAVFAC, and USACE participating on it, they work with GBCI and GBI on development of these compliance and assessment tools. So I know they're equally being worked on to be kept up to date. So I don't think that there's like a clear preference on like the Air Force side by any means, but certainly the points that Andy made may be enough reason to go with GBI over GBCI, depending on your situation.
There was a bit of a history to the GBCI side of things. It seems like they kind of set that up coming out of this desire to validate more directly against the UFC. I definitely, if you go to these web portals, the GBCI is going to send you to a link to contact GBCI, whereas GBI kind of has a web page that's fully built out, and there's a little bit more in the way of tools and resources and communication and things like that. So again, either I think is potentially viable. I definitely have gotten the read that on the security side, GBI, they can just sign an NDA and they handle it's a little bit less documentation intensive on the GBI side, but then it also requires, I believe, a site visit. So that's a trade-off that has to be considered when you're trying to pick a route. When we do our AE services contracts, sometimes we say use one for a specific reason, or sometimes we'll allow the AE to pick. Our general opinion is allow the AEs, when the project allows it, allow the AEs to pick the tool that they're most familiar with, because we think they'll be the most successful that way, which is good for the project.
Yeah, that's a good tip. All right, moving on, we also have, this is a USACE maintained site, the Mercy website. It also is where Centers of Standardization information and the model RFP are hosted. So there's a sustainability tab there. The link at the top is how you get there. Just wanted to make one note of caution. I'm not sure how up to date it is. I think there is an interest at headquarters to work on updating this, but basically, like, there's centers of expertise with points of contact that could be out of date, but wanted to let you know when you look in here, there may be, you know, guides and other materials that could be of use for you on your projects. I mean, we've had centers of expertise in sustainability for eco-charrettes, commissioning, energy modeling, ground source heat pumps, high performance building envelope, life cycle cost analysis. So I'd encourage you to go to the site, see what areas we have folks tagged to. I think there's some people that have transitioned, and some of this information may not be completely up to date as far as the points of contact, but also wanted to let you know that there are webinars that have been created in the past on various subjects. So if you go to the webinars link, there's additional information here on different subjects. If you're looking for more information on, like, the life cycle cost analysis, ECVs and stuff like that. So I guess hopefully we'll be doing this. I think we're going to be doing this again in the future, so hopefully there's better updates. This was maintained in the past, and I'm not sure how well it's been maintained more recently in the last few years, but there is a lot of good information on there that's about 4 years old probably at this point. And then also this webinar series, and as well as webinar series that were done in the past, they're all hosted on the USACE Sustainability YouTube channel. So this is another great link to look for information you'd like to hear more about, or to review, what we've been presenting over the last few months. And then we wanted to provide, a list of prospect courses to consider when we get back to doing those more in person. I know some have been made available virtually, but not all classes. I know the building air barriers and pressure testing and the HVAC testing and balancing, those classes are, and the systems commissioning, I think those have a lot of good hands-on options out in the field included with some of those. So definitely when we get back to doing classes in person, once we've got COVID behind us, those are great resources, as well as the Prospect 244 class that a lot of this material is coming from for sustainable military building design and construction. So just wanted to put those up there for you to check out and plan your IDPs with your supervisors. If you haven't been to some of these and they're of interest to you, definitely check those out. And then for headquarters USACE, engineering and construction POCs we have for sustainability program. Eric Mucklow is leaving at the end of this week, so Scott Wick will be the point of contact until replacement is identified. Tim Gordon is available for mechanical engineering topics. Brandon Martin for commissioning. He's been around, since we had the first ECB and then through development of the ER on total building commissioning. And then Don Carney for electrical engineering support. So just wanted to put those names out there for you guys. And then another resource, definitely check this out. If you're not aware of the engineering and construction desk reference, wanted to provide this link to you. I think this is usually maintained and updated like every couple of years. So the last update was summer of 2020, so a little over a year ago. Some of the names might be different, but they do have a listing of all those centers of expertise and sustainability from the Mercy site. Those are all in that desk reference with names tagged there, so that may be more up to date than the Mercy site. Also, you'll be able to find those headquarters points of contact in there, as well as a bunch of other subject matter experts in a bunch of other areas too, not just sustainability. So I wanted to put that plug out there. Like, that's a really good reference for finding people to make contact with. And then Eric Mucklow had started a spreadsheet in the file section of the MS Teams site that we've been sharing information on this webinar series in. So check that out if you are a district or MSC sustainability point of contact. Recommend putting your information in there to help with kind of linking people up and having a resource. So he was getting that started, and I believe once we post this presentation, the PowerPoint, there's that link provided for the MS Teams site that we've got there, so you guys can get to that since it's a pretty lengthy one. And then just wanted to provide some additional resources that students of some of the previous prospect course 244 have provided for what they've found useful in their execution of projects and making sure we're meeting the high performance sustainable building criteria. And I think I would like to turn it over to like open discussion on other resources you guys have found that have been useful that you'd recommend to others, as well as, you know, input on what more do you guys need for guidance and training in the field. We're definitely looking for your feedback on where things need to go. And Andy, I don't know if you've got anything else you'd like to add on that request.
Well, is there anything in the works with an updated Army sustainability implementation plan or anything like that? We talk about that at all?
I did not talk about that, and I don't think I provided a link to wherever that may be located currently. I did not look at the schedule. Is headquarters planning on updating that by summer?
Hi, this is Annette. We're working on it. We're going to call it the Sustainable Design Guide.
Yeah,
but
and
it won't really go into the other rating tools or, you know, the guiding principles certification tools.
Annette, was that tracking for release somewhere in late winter or early spring? I think that's what it was, but I can't remember 100% for sure.
Yeah, we're going to try to get a good draft, I think, sometime in January, and then circulate it for comments. And it could...
So there's old iterations of that out there, like what they call the Army Lead Implementation Plan or Implementation Guide.
It's a Lead Implementation Guide, yeah. And it's available online, the older one. So
just,
it would be super helpful if anybody has complaints about the old one that we could fix for the new one. Besides, it's too long, which I know. Or alternatively, what would be more useful to me would be if you look at the ECB and tell me what's missing that you need in an implementation guide.
Well, there's a question here, Annette and Kelly, about is there documentation to support construction teams managing third-party certification requirements and working with contractors? And I think that that's probably a pretty fair question. I know we seem to have difficulty transitioning projects sometimes from, you know, design and construction. We've talked plenty about like the best practices for, you know, instructions to field personnel and things like that. But, you know, making sure that sustainability intent and managing those requirements through construction initiation all the way through, you know, completion can sometimes be a challenge. You're dealing with lots of different subcontractors and primes and stuff like that you know, their experience with sustainability may vary widely. And I don't remember how much the lead implementation plan really addresses that. But are we aware of any other guidance?
No, I'd call that weak. I mean, it's like we need a whole training course on that.
Yeah, and
you know, if you're going to do a series of these webinars, I'd add a couple topics on that.
For sure. And, you know, ultimately,
I think Trish did that a long time ago when she worked for the Corps. I think she had some kind of training. That was a long time ago.
Well, even coming out of Sustainability 244, you know, that course mostly came out of a group of people that had more design biased experience, and we've made a push to make it more construction oriented. And what we do find is a good proportion of our students are construction personnel. And I still think that we have a way to go in improving the content for that type of stuff. But ultimately, maybe that's something we should take as a note and figure out how we can more, in a more targeted manner, address that gap.
I would say we probably need something for project managers too.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the lead or the Sustainable Design Guide will cover that well enough. Is there somebody who's an expert that we could pull in to help?
We have, I don't know. We have some construction-minded people on the prospect team. I don't know if they, and I know Nicole Berman, I think she's still on the line, has talked to some of this in the past as far as, you know, challenges go, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here.
It's always frustrating seeing a project where you thought you were going into construction in good shape, and then you find out, you know, after the fact that sustainability implementation plan wasn't followed through. It may have been approved, but it wasn't really followed, or, you know, things like that. But I think that you know, the conversation here is that the 01-3329 directs projects to maintain designer responsibility for sustainability through construction. I think some of the challenge is making sure that they continue to be engaged and that the correct people are being engaged by the field when that happens. But I'm not sure that I have a slam dunk solution to that when that doesn't happen.
Nicole, do you have an opinion?
I guess I would agree with what was indicated. I think that there is a definable change that happens for various reasons, and I think also at least the change that we've seen in our region over the last 10 years of what resources we have in the field. You know, a lot of our staff field offices have reduced, so that also has limited the amount of people who have maybe that focus too, in addition to the fact that we don't have documentation. I think this is a great question, and I even wrote it down ponder as people continue to make documents to hopefully help individuals. But I think we have to go at it in a lot of different ways and try to continue to make sustainability a priority as we do every part of our jobs. But if there is any feedback on what that would work best, we a lot of times go straight to, can we implement this into a document? But maybe there's another approach that we haven't thought of. So if there are field team members out here, please reach out to us to give us your thoughts on what would best help you.
When we did the lead ECB, tried to make a picture because nobody wants to read anything. So that chart with the lead credits, there is a little construction guy in the credits we thought the construction people needed to work on or be aware of, just so you can have that conversation. But
yeah, I agree with that, Annette. I think that was a really great application that you guys did for that in the ECB.
We made a picture with Excel.
I mean, just like any other requirement on a project, sustainability, number one, is a requirement. It's not just a goal. It's something that we're required by the UFC's, the DoD Building Code, to achieve. And just like anything else, if somebody's not tracking it continuously, there's increased risk for not meeting the full intent of the requirements. So anything that you can do as a team to continue to educate yourself. This is suspicion more than anything, than actual data, but I would guess that the number of certified like lead APs and certified professionals in sustainability that we have on the construction side of the house is trending down over time. I think that that's pretty accurate within my district, but it's still. Getting a certificate is not going to solve the problem, but it certainly gives you a better basis for being able to address the requirements during construction and things like that. So let's see here. Brianna has a question. What would be good for add guidance for small projects or projects at operating sites? How do they incorporate sustainability goals? Or Kelli, you can build on this, but like the UFC does address those items, correct?
Yeah, it does. So I'm wondering if it's maybe we do a highlight on maybe some of the smaller projects that have been reviewed through like the SDD validation visits or something. Just maybe that would be helpful if we went through like highlighting some of the lessons learned in those ECBs. Hopefully we still have somebody after this week that participated in those, or we can find people to speak to what some of those, like, background on some of that was, if it's not totally
I've been
clear.
to a lot of those, and it's like you have to do the best you can and you have to document everything, or the team will just say you didn't consider it, and that's the black mark of death.
Right, and we've ultimately had multiple conversations throughout the webinar series that just because you're doing lead doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to comply with other portions of the UFC, and the UFC kind of takes a tiered approach given the size and magnitude of the project. So make sure that you fully understand what you're obligated to implement on your individual project per the criteria, and then also one of the repeating conversations I know we've had is if you fail somewhere, that doesn't mean you throw your hands up in the air and then abandon all sustainability goals. Document what you did and what you didn't do, and then continue to try to implement all the stuff to the greatest degree that you can. The UFC has such a broad subset of things that need to be addressed. There's times where something's not successful, and that's not great, but keep trying to track the rest of the goals as well as you possibly can.
I like the idea of having construction people take the lead training. So Searle has all the data from USGBC on all the projects that are registered and certified. And just among friends, there's a whole bunch out there lurking that haven't gotten through the end of the process yet. I don't know whatever happened to any of those. I know the days when we were doing air quotes certifiable, those are never going to get certified. But recently, we haven't seen many get through the hurdles to actually be certified. So I don't know if people are having computer problems or there's been too much turnover, or I don't know.
Well, I know there was a push to do a bunch of registrations before version 4 came out, but so I'm wondering if some of those projects got tabled, because I feel like we had sequestration way back there that kind of moved stuff to out years, and so I'm wondering if some of those maybe aren't attached to projects anymore, or I guess I'd have to look into, can some of those be upgraded to version 4? I'm not sure what that means if registrations got made and then a project got put on hold. What happens to that if we can still use that for a later version?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have done that in the Kansas City district before.
I like Billy's idea of using LEED for commercial interiors. Have we been doing that?
I will say yes, we have on a lot of our renovation projects. That is a little fuzzy since other policy indicates a more defined black and white line. But the UFC technically allows it.
Yeah, and if somebody asked me, I'd say yeah. I mean, if it's the logical choice of LEED, maybe that needs to be written. So what is the NEBB guy from Eric? What does that mean?
Testing and balancing.
Ah. Okay.
And then, outside,
So
I don't know
is
if you
there
can
something
clarify.
people really need help with? Go on.
Well, she made this comment about it. PMs are held responsible for sustainability completion. So I'm a PM. Ultimately, I try my best to emphasize that sustainability is a requirement just equivalent to anything else, complying with the IBC or complying with the hangar UFC or whatever. But and I think that sometimes there is kind of a bias that sustainability is a nicety, not a requirement. That's just not true. And so ultimately, those are things that need to be worked at the project level. But I mean, my biggest suggestion would be continue to emphasize that this is a USC requirement. And ultimately, if a project is of a magnitude that doesn't require third-party certification, it still doesn't mean that you don't have to comply with the remainder of the UFC. So make sure you're coming to the table with the correct requirements. But then I don't know. We don't seem to have a lot of pushback within our group. If sustainability, it's a third-party certification is required, we do it. And it doesn't mean we're successful all the time, but we do it. And I would also argue that we typically are the responsible person for making sure that is reported, that information is being reported correctly in coordination with our STD lead at the district.
I think we need to rebuild our team so we have contacts throughout the districts and divisions that are sustainable design people. So we lost a lot of people. I like the comments coming in. So do you guys know
Sounds
that
like we
you're
need to have
supposed
a
to
webinar
use
for
the,
PMs.
yeah, that's a great idea. Do you know you're supposed to use the Army Climate or Defense Climate? What is the A for, Kelly? That tool? Adaptation tool? DCAT?
Yeah, the DoD Climate Assessment Tool.
Yeah, so at the beginning of every project, you're supposed to go to that website and look at your site and see what the climate issues are, and then think about how to address those in your project and talk about that to the installation people. We put that in the ECB. I don't know if people know about that yet.
And I think there are links in the master planning USC to 101. So, and that includes links for, so there's 2 sites for the DoD Climate Assessment Tool, one for CONUS, which actually includes Alaska and Hawaii as well. And then there's like rest of the world, which is all the other overseas sites where we have DoD installations. So 2 different sites for level of data set that was available for the U.S. versus the rest of the world.
So Kathleen, if you go to the ECBN lead, there's a link in there, and they did an analysis where all the Army installations are, and it tells you when you find your installation in the tool, it tells you what the climate issues are that are going to be dooming the installation that you have to address. And there's no real known way how to do all these things, so you're going to have to figure out what's the best way to address the issues. And I would suggest talking to the installation people because they always have opinions too.
Yeah, I'll try to post a link here for that.
Okay. Yeah. Ultimately, over the next couple of years, all the installations are supposed to have gone through looking at that tool and developing a plan kind of at the master planning level as far as what their risks are and areas that they need to prioritize and focus on. And that should be a plan available for teams to look at as far as what have the master planners put together, and what are the priorities and goals for the installation, and that should be getting addressed within any of our projects where we're developing like the built environment at the installation, and how are we adapting to those climate projections. So they have started those at some locations, but I think it's going to be a couple of years before they've all, like, everyone's gone through developing one of those. So that's a good discussion point if you're starting a project, to find out if that's been done yet, and looking at and planning to look at that tool with the installation master planners.
And it's, you're going to have to save water because there's going to be droughts and fires, and you'll have to deal with hotter temperatures or flooding. There's a lot of common issues, and you can look at that DCAT tool and see those issues, and then within your building, you minimize energy use, try to get renewable energy in. You do the same things you would want to do, but with more vigor, I hope. I don't think we can continue to flush water down toilets. That's just a nuts opinion. So I'm curious about building resiliently too. And there's those pilot resilience credits. And I saw somebody said Allison had a project where she tried to get one of those and she couldn't get it. I'd like to talk to her about that sometime. I don't know if we have time now or not. Thanks, Jerry.
think we've just got a few more minutes here, but I really appreciate everyone's comments so far. This is good information on where we need to go next, and looks like there could be some opportunity for some webinars, you know, to be developed more in the immediate future, especially if we're doing another series like this at the start of the next year. So really appreciate all the feedback, and I think you know, for some of these, Andy, you're taking notes on these. We may reach out to some of you for additional like input and information.
Yeah, I'm gonna archive this chat feed here, and we have an opportunity to reach out if we need additional information. So, I didn't want to forget it. There was a comment about WUFI. I know we've used WUFI in our district in the past. We haven't used it that much recently. I don't know if it's a licensing issue or what, but isn't it? I believe it's for through wall dew point analysis type things. So. Definitely see AEs using it a lot. Anything else, Kelly? Otherwise, we probably better wrap things up. And I appreciate everybody participating. I think our next and last module in this series, at least for this year, is next week on resiliency. Is there anything else we missed?
No, I think that's it. Thank you everyone for participating in the chat, so we could, you know, talk through some of this stuff, and hope some of the resources we provided are useful, and hopefully on the next series we'll have some updates for you on the human resources side of things. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
All right, everyone take care.